And then when you end the Zoom, the file will start to process, and then it'll be in your file
I'll
on
edit
your
this bit
computer,
out.
and then you can upload it.
Okay, cool. Right, I'm going to admit everyone. Good evening, everybody. I'll give you all a minute or two just to get logged in. I hope everybody's well. Give us a
Hi.
wave if you're here, if you're online, if you
Bye.
can see us. Say hello.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. It's so lovely to see so many of you. And we've still got more people joining, which is fantastic. There's some regular faces here, and we've got lots of new faces as well, which is beautiful. If it's possible, I'm just going to ask you all to mute for now. Let me just make sure everybody's muted and make sure everybody is in.
Do I have to mute myself?
No, you're all right. You can stay unmuted for now.
Yeah.
For now, we'll see how you get on, and I might mute you in a bit. So, hello, everybody. Let me just give you a quick introduction to what this is. So there's some people here that have been here before and some that haven't. This is called Ask Becky. And this is a weekly Zoom session, completely free. Drop in. You can either stay the whole hour or you can just drop in, ask a question and then go if you need. The point of this is to always know that you've got somewhere that you can go to. And sometimes being a driving instructor or being a trainee driving instructor, it can be pretty lonely and it can feel a little bit like you've not got much support. And I remember being a PDI and thinking, oh, I've got a question, who can I ask and where can I go? And so as part of empathetic instructor training, I set this up as well, just so people have got somewhere to go. We've been running now for about 3 months, and I'm so excited to tell you all that tonight we have our first guest person to ask things to. That wasn't presented very well, was it? So tonight we've got Ask Becky and Lee, and obviously, hopefully you all know Lee Spary. Hi, Lee.
Hi, Becky.
Hello. Thank you for coming on and doing this. I think it's really great that people know who's available to them, which is good. And also to know that, you know, we talk, all of us trainers talk, and we help each other with you guys. It's a very community feel in our industry at the minute, and it's really important that you guys know that there's lots of people that you can turn to. Hence why we've got Lee here. So we'll go over just a little bit of housekeeping quickly because there is a lot of people here, which is brilliant. I think if everybody unmutes that wants to ask something, we're all going to be a little bit overwhelmed. So what I would ask you to do, if it's okay, is if you've got a question, pop your little hand up, or not your actual hand, the little one, the Zoom one that comes on, or pop your question in the chat, or message me as well. And then me and Lee can work our way through the questions one by one. If you pop your hand up and you want to ask something, you are then more than welcome to unmute when I invite you to ask your question out loud and chat to us. Hopefully that's okay. So while we give you guys a couple of minutes to pop any questions in the chat, Lee, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. Does everyone know how to put the hand up on Zoom? You put your hand up if you don't know how to do it. There's one. There's always bloody one. It's Carl.
And it's Carl, isn't it? It's always Carl and all. Oh.
It has to be. Well, if you don't know how to do it, then just put your actual hand up.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so while we wait for a couple of hands to rise or a couple of questions, we got sent some questions, Lee, to kick us off. So we've kind of talked about how we're going to do this. I'm going to let you go first for this one, okay? So I'm going to fire this one at you if that's all right. First question we've got of the evening. Dealing with I don't know answers. What do you think caused that? Don't know. What were you thinking or feeling? Don't know. What do you think might help? Don't know. Over to you.
I think it's important that we recognize where I don't know comes from. I think the first thing to recognize is that it could be because they don't know. But it also could be for different reasons, like they're not quite comfortable with you yet. in terms of what your response to their answer might be. So, and the other thing as well is that, it might be like a defense mechanism. So if they've been at school and they've been asked the question by the teacher and they've got it wrong and the whole class laughed at them, then they're thinking, well, if that person asks me a question again, I'm just going to say I don't know. Then the teacher will ask the next boy and he'll get laughed at instead. So, it could be for many reasons. It's not very helpful, but it sounds like the person that was asking the question there is trying more than just one question. And I do see that quite a lot where we ask one kind of coachy question, and as soon as we get an I don't know, we just revert back to type and start telling them. So it sounds like whoever sent that question in is trying different. If they get an I don't know every time, then what I would be looking at is the dynamic between the instructor and the pupil. Is it one of those kind of hierarchy, all-knowing, amazing instructor and stupid learner? And the instructor tends to tell the learner what to do and dominate the lesson. Because if you have that nice balance between two people working together towards achieving a goal, then they're not going to say I don't know because they're not scared of your answer, but maybe that's the case. And I think coaching is one of those things that you can't really just turn the switch and just do it. And if you are trying it with learners who are used to you not doing it, then it's quite it doesn't really work. So you might want to bring it in with new learners and phase it in over time, because otherwise your existing learners might be very confused with what you're doing. I think it needs to start from the beginning. Like lesson 1 should be Q&A, and then build them up over time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with you. That rapport's got to be there from the off, hasn't it? And I guess just to add to that as well, if that rapport isn't there, like you mentioned, they might feel a little bit like timid and a bit like back to school, where if I don't answer that, I won't get picked on. But another thing to add to that, I guess, is sometimes they get so used to you asking a question, but then giving them the answer anyway, that they just get a bit lazy with it too. And they just kind of go, oh, I don't know. Because if I say I don't know, I don't have to do much work here, and Lee will do it for me. So yeah, just like Lee said, maybe you might need to change the question a little bit, or change how things are in the car, just to get them chatting a little bit. Fabulous. Question 2. Roles and responsibilities. All my pupils want to try to do things independently. If I don't think it's appropriate, should I set the roles or responsibility rather than allowing students to choose? So I'll go first on this one, just like what we said. Yep. Okay, so if you've got a learner that always says, can I just have a go? Can I just have a go? Can I just have a go? There's nothing wrong with that. If you think that they can have a go, there's nothing wrong with that. What this person here has asked is if you don't think it's appropriate. A lot of people think that client-centered means that if the learner says, can I have a go? We have to go, yeah, go on then. Even though you just tried to kill me on a roundabout, yeah, off you go. You go and have a go. But actually, there's nothing wrong with saying, do you know what, on this one, we're going to work together. I'm going to help you with this one. Let's work together to get it right. And then we'll see if we can give you a little bit more of the work to do. There's nothing wrong with you being the instructor. And that's not you being instructor-led. You're still being client-centered, because you need to make sure that the risk is managed. So if your learner has just nearly killed you at a roundabout and then says, yeah, but can I do it myself again? Well, no, that's not an option anymore. We're either going to have me fully talk you through, or I'm going to give you a little bit of help with some questions, because we need to get this right in a safe manner. Yeah, that would be my input. Go for it, Lee.
I think, when is it appropriate to do that? Is as part of that question. And I think you've nailed it there with what you said, that if something safety critical has just happened, then that option should be off the table. And there's still other options there, so it's still client-centered. We could try it again. I could talk you through it. We could try it again. I could maybe jog your memory by asking you some prompting questions. So it's still client-centered because there's still options. But imagine it on a standards check or a part 3 where there's just been something serious happen. The examiner is like still catching the breath and the heart rate's still coming down, sat in the back. And then you go, oh, would you like to try that again on your own? And the examiner's going, get me out of here.
Yeah.
But it's not always like that, is it? So, and this is something that I see quite a lot with, not serious faults, where we don't give the learner the option of trying it again, because the instructor's mindset is, well, we've tried it and it didn't work. So, and now we've talked about it. So what's the point in doing it without help? Because it wasn't working before without help. But if you've done the sufficient feedback, that analysis conversation right, then learning has taken place since they weren't doing it. So the example I always use on one of my courses is, the learner who's been missing the left mirror. And once you've had a good conversation and you've used risk to really drive home that change of mindset in your learner, then the person that was missing the mirror might have been the person that was thinking, it's only a fault, it's not a big deal. But the person that has just said, oh my God, I could have hit a bike, and had that realization through that conversation, they haven't even tried it on their own yet. So why would you hold that back from them? So I think as a rule of thumb, if it's safety critical, then no, we wouldn't do it like that. But we certainly shouldn't be holding back that if it's not serious, because it will empower them if you let them have a go.
Absolutely.
Oh, can I just add one more thing? Sometimes the way that we word that question doesn't allow them to choose that option. Like, what help would you like from me? Sounds a lot like the only options is help from me. So if you say, would you like any help from me? Then that opens up the option of independent as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you need to be curious about the way you use your language with your learner, and really figure out what works and what doesn't. And it depends on the learner as well, on how you speak. Absolutely. So we've had a couple of questions in the chat now, so we'll have a look at them, and we can always come back to the ones I got sent to in a little bit. And so Carmen has asked how we can help somebody with dyspraxia with the steering. Over to you.
Am I doing that first?
You do that one first this time.
I think, overloading the learner is never going to help any learner. If they've got too much on the plate, it's going to be very hard for them to learn. So I think when you're teaching anyone, regardless of whether they've got dyspraxia or not, you need to give it them in these sort of bite-sized chunks and kind of build on, what you learned last, and then you're building on like a solid foundation. But especially with people with dyspraxia, they're going to struggle to pick it up, maybe someone that doesn't have dyspraxia. So the chunks need to be even smaller and build them up in even smaller chunks. And they'll still have that self-efficacy because they're still doing it right, even though they're making maybe less progress than someone else. If we keep doing it wrong and it's not working, then they're likely just to think it's not for me, this, and I'm going to give up, which isn't good for your business either. I know we're talking about the learner and their feelings, but you're still running a business. So you don't want people not enjoying the lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, the smaller chunks with those people, they're still achieving something, so they still feel great about themselves. And I guess if they're having a problem with steering, making sure that your practice areas are suitable. So big empty car parks, letting them have a real big play and letting them find out what works for them. There's lots of different strategies you can try. You might see on some of these groups, people might say, and put your thumbs up, to like help keep it straight, things like that. And try having a look at their different hand position as well, see what works for them. We all know that you don't have to be at 10 and 2 anymore, just as long as you're under control. And if all else fails, if you are trying and trying and trying, make sure you've asked the learner if they know what will work for them, because sometimes they might have the answer. They just might not. If that rapport isn't there yet, they might not feel ready to give you the answer. But if all else fails, even from that, there are some really great people in our industry, some specialists that you could get in touch with, that myself or Lee could put you in touch with. If you have anybody like that, let us know. We can definitely point you in the right direction of people that are more qualified than us, that deal with people like that regularly.
I feel it's appropriate to mention Chris Benson's name at this point.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Give him a little plug. This is being recorded. You'll see it eventually. We've had another question in the comments that says, have I brought a cup of coffee yet? So let me just fill you all in very quickly on this. There is a running theme with Ask Becky that when I meet driving instructors, trainees and ADIs, during the week, I don't buy a cup of coffee. This is a lie. There is a few people here that I've brought a cup of coffee for. So it's just a bit of a running joke. I brought coffee for you, Lee. Can you back me up here, please?
Yeah, you've got the one in Sheffield.
Thank you.
That actually happened.
That actually, we should have took a picture of that coffee. So all these regulars here that are laughing now, you've heard it from somebody. Okay. Okay, so we've got another question. What would help a learner who is very busy with steering when trying to keep the car in a reasonably straight pathway? They appear to hold the wheel too tightly and move it up and down constantly. Busy with the steering. So I'm assuming trying to keep the car in a reasonably straight pathway. Perhaps they're in an area that there's quite a lot going on. Maybe the steering is being faltered because there's quite a lot for them to concentrate on. If they're holding the wheel tightly as well, that tends to be something, it's definitely something that you should pick up on if it happens on your Part 3 or standards check, because it's a physiological response to something. The learner's doing that for a reason. What's distracting them? What's causing them to maybe feel anxious or nervous? I once had a girl, she was really gripping the steering wheel tightly, but everything else was going really well. And I'd noticed, you know, you can really tell when they're doing it, and it was quite, her arms were quite rigid. And I just kind of said, "Are you feeling all right?" She was like, "Yeah." And I thought, "Oh, wow, she's changed." And I said, are you sure you're okay? Is there anything you want to do? And we ended up stopping. And I said, "Just tell me, I can, you know, your demeanor has changed. Just tell me." And she went, "Oh, my sister died on this road." And I just thought, oh my goodness, but obviously I wouldn't know that unless I spoke to her. So we got off that road. But, you know, things like that, we're not going to know unless we speak to our learners and have a conversation. So pick up on things like that. I've mentioned this in Ask Becky before as well. I once had a girl whose demeanor completely changed, and she was holding the wheel tightly and she just did not want to carry on. And I'd asked her to pull up outside her ex-boyfriend's house, which was awkward. So she was like, "Can we just go away, please?" So yeah, just pick up on what they're doing and maybe take them away from whatever is distracting them, but you won't know unless you have a conversation with them. Lee, what are your thoughts?
Well, pretty much the same, really. I think you've kind of nailed it there. I think, you know, the way I would worded it was probably not as good as the way you worded it, but you know, they're probably bricking themselves for something. And then it's worth that conversation to, like you said, find out what that is. And that might reveal more than just the steering issue. And it, you know, when you resolve that, that might sort that out. But really, it's you know, it's fear, isn't it? That's what makes them grip the wheel tightly. So it's about finding out what that fear is based on and then helping them overcome it. It might be a rational fear. So plug for Diane Hall, who's great at helping people overcome irrational fears. Because they might just be scared of animate objects that are coming up down the road where there's nothing to be actually scared of, because a roundabout can't eat you.
And if anybody hasn't heard of Diane Hall, she is our industry's test nerve specialist. She is fantastic. And I'm doing a Zoom with her on Sunday evening. If you are interested, go to pdiadi.com for that. We have another question from Billy. Is there a preference where the first lesson should take place? Should we go and find a quiet road or go find a quiet car park, or is it client-led? Over to you.
Well, I think there's quite a lot of instructors in our industry that still teach topics. They're going to look for a road because the first one is moving off at the side of the road. But we're moving more towards, like with the GDE and that kind of shift that is happening in our industry, where we're now recognizing finally that there's no point trying to do a subject if they don't have the skills to do the subject. You know, a learner who is walking down a high street isn't scared of the people walking towards them because they've got control over their bodies. They can stop, they can move, they can speed up, they can slow down. You put someone on a road with parked cars on both sides, then they're bricking it because they don't feel like they can control the car, because they haven't developed skills that they need in the subjects that they are doing. So for me, it would always be a car park, because we need to build skills and then take them on a road and use those skills in topics. So that's an easy one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you can find a massive car park, giving them the space, like Lee said, to just play with the car, then that's really great. If you can't, maybe something like an industrial estate, big wide roads, things like that. And I think just following on what you said, Lee, it's definitely about the skills, not the subjects. And I hear a lot from people that say, you know, we've had 18 hours and we're having to look at clutch control again, or we've done 20 hours and we've got to go back to gears. And sometimes it might be that the car control wasn't exploited quite enough and it wasn't deep enough. Sometimes the learner might do it 3 or 4 times and you might think, yeah, they've nailed this, we're ready for the next thing. And then when you chuck on the next thing, that last thing's gone. And it might be that we've just not dug deep enough with that particular thing. And there's nothing wrong with going back a step. I had somebody ask me the other day, what do I say to a learner who I've got to go back a step, they don't want to go back? And I said, well, just don't make it out like you're going back a step, make it like you're cementing the foundations of driving. So yeah, I think it depends on your practice, your location, your learner's area. It depends on what you've got available. You don't want to drive half an hour just to get to a big car park. But if you can, a car park would be beneficial to give them that space.
Can I just jump back in on what Billy said at the end of his question, where he said, or is it client-led? It sounds like Billy is worried that, you know, certain things, you know, must come from the learner, or he's not being client-centered. So, you know, choosing a location to work on something is your area of expertise. So that's you. You know, the route is going to come from you because you know where you are and you know where the best place is to work on that thing. So don't feel you're not being client-centered. You wouldn't ask your learner to plan the route, would you? Because they don't know what they're doing. You could involve them, I suppose, but it's just going to really take a bit longer than it needed to. In the same way, you know, when a learner does a mistake, something that would have been a fault on a driving test, you know, there's still a lot of people that feel that they have to try and get the learner to tell you what the fault is that you already damn well know they just did. But you can just tell them because that's your area of expertise. You're the one with the training and the expertise and the experience and the expert eye. And they're a 17-year-old kid. So just tell them what the fault was and then have a conversation about it. So, you know, I just wanted to add that in because I didn't want Billy to think everything needs to come from the learner because sometimes you're the expert. You always know what they want, but they always know how they feel inside. So that's why when you're asking them what help they want, you know, we used to tell them what help they were going to get. But you might think you know, but you don't know them as well as they know themselves. So that's why I'd always ask them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We've got a question from Jessica in the comments. I recently was unsuccessful on my first attempt at part 3. Sorry to hear that, Jessica. The examiner wrote a 2-line feedback on my result. I've spoken to my franchise and they said it's usually 6 or 7 paragraphs. Is that correct? Thanks, guys. So in my experience, they don't write 7 paragraphs now. That's way too long. So you guys now get it on email. It used to be a form and the box was about that big and they didn't leave a lot of room to give much feedback. I've known some results that's just had 1 sentence and I've known some that's had 3 or 4 sentences. It depends what the feedback was that they gave you, Jessica, and how specific it is. And what you took from that. I would assume as well they had a chat with you about your results and hopefully they probably gave you some more information there. It would be great to know what it was. Feel free to forward it to both of us and we can absolutely have a chat with you. Lee?
Yeah, I was going to say that if you send it to me, I can have a look at it because for me, when I'm looking at forms, it's in the scoring. It's more in the points rather than in what they say at the bottom. You can always see where the fundamental issues lie by looking at where you got 1 grades. So it might be that they just didn't want to waffle on and they were being quite concise with their 2 lines. Sometimes they waffle on and you have to pick out which bits actually mean something. So in that way, probably it'd be better just to have 2 lines. But yeah, if you let us see that, then we can give you our diagnosis of it.
I remember.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. I remember the lovely Lou Walsh told us all about a form that she'd been given back from a PDI, and the PDI through their part 3 kept saying, "Go forward a smidge, just move in a smidge, just a little bit, just a smidge more." And the examiner's feedback, the only line on the bottom was, "What is a smidge?" And that's all the examiner put at the bottom. So they don't go into massive detail. They just get the point across with that little bit. But like you said, it's absolutely the points. And you can see with the ones where they all flow together as well, very much so. Ian says, I have a go with bay parking in a very quiet car park and their first time, easy and slow, and gives them a feel for the car in slow time. Yeah, absolutely, Ian. On that first lesson, while you're driving around a car park, yeah, stick it in between the lines, go for it.
Just to jump in on that as well, I mean, that's what I was kind of referring to earlier about building skills. You know, and when your learner is doing a T-junction in a manual car, they're going to have to use the clutch at the same time as turning the steering wheel. And if they can't do that, then they're not going to do the T-junction. And if they can't do the T-junction, it's not a T-junction problem. It's a coordination of the clutch and the steering that they don't have problem. So you need to coordinate that first and have that skill in the bag, and then use it in topics where those skills are required. So that's a good example. And by doing some sort of maneuver in the car park, you're building skills.
Yeah, absolutely. We tend to hear a lot, don't we? I'm going to go do roundabouts on my part 3. I'm going to go and do junctions, but it's the skill, isn't it, on the junction? Uzair says, can you put some light on goals and needs, please? I'm not going to lie, I thought you were asking me to put the light on when I first read that.
I did that as well. Am I in the dark? What's going on?
You literally got the light on. Can you put some light on goals and needs, please? Over to you, Lee, first.
Oh yeah, this is really an easy one. The need is what the learner needs to work on, and the goal is what they're trying to achieve by working on it.
Continue chatting just while I reply to Jessica in the chat.
The need is the thing that the learner needs to work on, and the goal is the thing that they're trying to achieve by working on it.
Keep going. Hang on, I can't text. I can't type and talk, so you have to just fill.
Okay, so really, it's kind of the start and the end of a lesson plan. It's the skeletal form of one. So, you know, whenever you're going to put a lesson plan together, you need to have those two things, you know, in place before you do anything else. So we need to know this is what we're working on, and this is what we're trying to achieve by working on it. And then you can work inwards and start filling in that middle bit, which would be, where are we going to go to work on it? What help would you like? How long are we going to try it like this? What are the roles and responsibilities that we're going to assign? And then you can then work towards that point. And when the learner is doing the thing that they set out to do at the beginning, then they've done it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh gosh, hang on, just dropping everything. Yeah, Lee hit the nail on the head there. A good example of the difference between goals and needs is, you know, when your learner gets into the car and they say, can I do motorways? You can say, well, what skills is it that you need to get to motorways? So they're the needs that we need to work on before we get to the goal of you feeling comfortable on motorways, for example. So the skills are your need that we need to do to get you to that goal that you want to do. No problem, Jessica. Can you forward me your form? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, no problem. Any more questions at the moment? If you guys can pop some questions in the chat or pop your hands up, we will take a quick moment to let you guys know where you can find us while you're getting us your questions in. Lee, do you want to let everybody know where they can find you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite present on social media, on Facebook, Twitter. It's not called Twitter anymore. X.
Everybody calls it Twitter still, though, right? It's never going to be X.
Or through my website. So if you're an ADI, that's adidoctor.co.uk. And if you're a PDI, then it's pdidoctor.co.uk. Or you can just email me or send me a message, and then email me. Yeah, I'm quite easy to get hold of.
So email you, message, Facebook, email, X.
Yeah. Internet stuff.
X, Twitter X. Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same for me, pretty much. You can find me on Facebook. Feel free to add me as a friend. My inbox is always open to people. I'm on Empathetic Instructor Training. That's my page. And then we also have the Empathetic Instructor Training group, where every week I'll post tasks. We have this chat that you guys are now here with every week. And lots of other bits and bobs that go on in there. It's a really good, positive community that we've created. Amazing. Thank you for some more questions, guys. So we've got, is Andy Mack going to regrow his beard? Andy Mack is a lovely guest that we have with us who had a beard last week and now he doesn't. There we go. Carmen, any games to help with mirrors? Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
You can go first on this one.
Okay, so I guess the first thing I would say is games with mirrors would be like a teaching and learning strategy, which is really good. It's if they're not getting it, it would be something that you can go, okay, well, what about we try this? So that's really good. Ask your learner if they can think of any games that might work for them. I'm really competitive. I don't let my kids win at any games that I play with my kids. So I would suggest that we play like a whiteboard game. I'll have a whiteboard on us. And if the learner checks the mirror, they get a mark. If they don't check the mirror, I get a mark. And the idea is obviously for the learner to win, but I'm so competitive. I try and distract them. Obviously, if it's safe to do so, I'll try and chat to them and distract them so that they miss the mirrors and I get the points. And there's loads of different things you can try, and definitely just ask your learner what will work for them. They might have a game, or they might have a solution. They might say, can you point to it every time? That could be a game. Or can you, it could be that you identify the hazard and then your learner, it kind of prompts your learner to check the mirrors. There's lots of things that you could try. Over to you, Lee.
I think the first thing I'm going to say is proper boring because it's not a game. But I think we tend to emphasize a lot on the checking of the mirror, rather than the looking for the stuff is quite a problem that I see. When we start to prompt people, we start to use prompts like, which mirror do you need next? And that just gets learners to look at a piece of glass for your benefit, so you won't nag them. So, when you're prompting them for mirrors, always say, what's behind you, or are there any bikes on your left, or is there anyone overtaking you? And actually get them to look for stuff rather than encouraging them to look at a piece of glass for your benefit. In terms of games, a really good one is one that I like to call Centre Mirror Bingo. Because learners get really good at going mirror signal when they're approaching junctions. It's when they tend to be approaching stuff that's not MSPSL, like traffic lights that turn to red and cars in front break into a stop and stuff like that, and queuing traffic, stuff like that. So Centre Mirror Bingo is really the learner looking for stuff that's going to make them brake, and you can compile a list first before you start. And the list has got a lot of lights on it, so brake lights, indicator lights, red traffic lights, green traffic lights, brows of a hill, blind bends, triangles, and you can sort of compile this list, and then you can play the game where as soon as one of you see that, then you've got to call it out. And that's a really good way of doing it. And again, I don't think I've ever lost at that game because I'm really competitive too. People always say, do you not let your learners win? I'm like, no.
No, not a chance.
It's my route as well, so I know where everything is. But I think it's definitely important that we emphasize that they're looking for stuff, and we've got to be very careful with the prompts that we use, because sometimes we're trying to. It's almost like we see it as we need to get them to look in the mirrors, and that's where those kind of prompts come from. But you've got to look at the big picture, which is get them to think about risk all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess just to follow on for that as well is if you're feeling like you're having to always remind your learners to check the mirrors, and you feel like mirrors are a recurring thing every lesson, and you're getting sick to the back teeth of it and they're getting sick to the back teeth of it, something needs changing. And that's where you could absolutely try Centre Mirror Bingo or anything else like that. You need to make sure that it's sold to your learner, that they buy into why it's happening.
Oh, can I just jump back in with that as well? Centre Mirror Bingo is also really good from an instructor point of view, because quite often when instructors are missing mirrors, when learners are missing mirrors, instructors aren't noticing the learner miss the mirrors. So you can play Centre Mirror Bingo yourself. So if you see anything ahead that's going to make your learner brake, then that can be your cue to look at their eyes to see if they're looking in the mirrors before they brake. And you can use that for parked cars as well, and stuff that they're going to steer around. So you're looking actively for these triggers that are in front of you that are going to make your learner have to check mirrors, and that would then trigger you to look at them to make sure you're seeing it or not seeing it.
Amazing. We've got a question from Nick. If the pupil misses their blind spot, do you think it's a good idea to duel them to prove the point, or simply mention it afterwards? I know instructors who do both. I've lost track. Who's first?
You can go first because I'm replying to Jessica's message.
Okay. Do you think it's a good idea to duel them to prove the point, or simply mention it afterwards? if you're in a safe area, if there is nothing around you and you know that for a good few minutes nothing's going to be there, so you're talking a very safe area, you could potentially, but I guess all that you're kind of going to teach them there is that is that you're going to intervene quite harshly potentially. There's nothing wrong with maybe saying, if it's about moving off at the side of the road, there's nothing wrong with saying, stop, don't move the car yet. Tell me where you think you should be looking, and maybe use it in that manner. I wouldn't do it. The only reason I wouldn't do it is because I think that all that does is teach my learner that if they miss it, I'm going to intervene physically. So actually, I'm going to be the one that stops them from hitting the cyclist. That's all that kind of teaches them. Whereas actually, if I can say, stop the car a minute and just secure yourself again, where do you think you should be looking when you move off? Why do you think you should be looking there? What could happen if X, Y, and Z was there? Have you got a way of knowing if somebody was there? I think that might cement the points a little bit more, getting the learner to do all the work, getting the learner to go, actually, there could be something there. That might cement the point a little bit more rather than the learner going, oh, it's okay if I'm about to hit a cyclist because Becky's got me, she's going to just duel me. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, quickly
before
Lee comes back in.
Hi, Nick.
Yeah, sorry. Hi. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, I probably think I agree with you more there. I don't tend to do it as much. It's my trainer that tends to do it more. And I can understand why he does it. It does sort of kind of ram it up. Like, oh, God, it sort of wakes you up a little bit. And I think what you said there, no, stop, wait, stop. And if they keep moving, I think that's when, would you agree? Yes, then you would need to use the jewels. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah.
I can't find this question. Who asked this question originally?
Nick.
I just got lost in replying to Jessica. Nick, right? Okay. Who misses? Do you think? Oh no, no. And this is something that I've talked to PDIs about on their very first part 3 session, which is, you can use the dual controls for good, to keep them safe and to do demonstrations as well. But don't be a dick with your dual controls. And that's something that I'll give you an example. This was with a PDI and a learner a few months ago, and the learner was emerging from a crossroads. And when there's a crossroads, there's another observation, isn't there? There's an extra observation ahead. But 9 out of 10 end of the road scenarios that learners come to will be T-junctions, and they get used to looking left and right, left and right. At the crossroads, there's 3 checks because there's 3 roads, isn't there, right? And there was nothing coming on this road from any direction. And the learner started to pull out, who was looking left and right, and he went bang on the dual controls. And you could just tell the confidence of that learner had just kind of ebbed away in that moment. And I said to him, if you'd have just said hang on or wait or stop, then you could have still made your point. But don't be a dick with your dual controls. Because, and sometimes that comes from frustration. And that's happened to me, and I've done that. And if you're doing that because you're frustrated, then you need to look at yourself. Are you overworked? Are you not hydrated? Are you hungry? Are you overworked? Are you not getting enough sleep? Because that's not on at all. That's just not on. And it will destroy your learner's confidence, and they're probably going to do worse now. And then you can get mad at that as well. So, just take the day off and go and walk on the beach.
And if anybody takes anything from tonight, it's definitely just don't be a dick.
Yeah, that's really important. It should be in the national standard for driver and rider training, right at the top.
That's the point. Joanna has said, on a reverse park behind a car, can you pull forward to finish, or does it need to be one complete reverse maneuver? Over to you. Now you finished texting.
Where are we? This is Jessica's fault. I've completely lost where I was. Where are we now?
Joanna.
Right, and go. Oh, right. Okay. On a reverse bay park behind a car, like parallel parking in it. Can you pull forward to finish, or does it need to be? Yeah, on part 2, it's going to be a fault if you pull forward, because they're looking for perfection. At a part 2 level, the examiner's thinking this needs to be sexy, because when you do it, demonstrate this for a learner, it needs to not look fumbly and naff. It needs to be like the best thing the learner's ever seen. And one day they will be like, I really want to be able to do it that nice one day. So yeah, you're going to get a fault if you pull forward on a part 2 level. On a driving test, you're not going to get a fault unless you keep pulling forward, or if you pull forward and don't look around. And a good rule of thumb to say to learners is a new gear change is a new start. A new start is new checks. Because if we have to pull forward, we often pull forward in a panic, like, oh my God, I'm going to hit the curb, I'm going to fail my test. And then we pull forward and we can get a serious fault there for observation. So new gear, new start, new checks.
Perfect. There you go. There's nothing really to add to that. You've covered it. Amazing. Ian says my new clock should be behind me. It should.
Like
everyone that knows about my clock.
Bob's got a clock behind him.
Has he? Oh, well, he doesn't have a clock, does he? Yeah, I've seen that.
If you want to be like Bob one day, you need to get a clock behind you.
Carl says, for business management for block bookings that are prepaid, would you say it is fair to place a time frame on when they are used up? I'll go first on this one. So when I was a PDI, I was with a franchise who said that 5 hours must be within 6 weeks, 10 hours must be within 12 weeks. I don't know what the laws are, but I do know that they're paying customers and that they would be entitled to a refund no matter what, I believe. It would be interesting to find that out. We'll see if we can get that stuck in the group from some sort of official thing. I personally don't, because I think I don't deal with many learners now anyway, but the ones that I do deal with who block book, I feel like I have such a good rapport with them anyway that I just see them weekly, and if they are having a week off for a holiday or whatever, they just let me know. And I think if you're getting to a point where you've had a block booker who's paid you for 10 hours and you've not seen them for 4 weeks, a conversation needs to be had where you need to be saying, what are you wanting to do? Are you wanting to continue? Are we taking this seriously, or shall I refund you the rest, kind of thing? Because for business management as well, if you have 10 people block book you, that's a lot of income, and you need to manage that and make sure that they're being regular with it, so that you're paying yourself weekly out of your block booking separate account if you do that. Lee, over to you.
I think you've got to be quite strict, so you don't lose money. And I'm one of those idiots that did this for a long time and took payment on the day. And then, you've got little Timmy who's got his lesson at 4 o'clock on Friday, and he's sat in his bed thinking, oh, I don't really fancy this. And if I don't go to the lesson, I can get drinking earlier today. And, I'd have this extra money to spend. Oh yeah, I'm gonna cancel the lesson. If he's going to lose his fee for not turning up, he's going to turn up. And I lost a lot of money in, a lot of lost revenue in. It's a complete mugs game is letting them pay on the day. So at least Carl is already thinking about, and doing block bookings, because it's a really good idea, with a stringent refund policy behind it, a cancellation policy behind it, should I say. Because you're running a business and no one's going to help you run that business. You're on your own. You've got to do that. As a kind of flip side to that, you've also got to be human as well. And I always say that everyone gets one chance. People's dog doesn't die, 2 weeks in a row. Do you know what I mean? So you tend to find out if they're like that and they're going to cancel. But no, I don't think I would. I don't think I would put a time frame on it, to be honest. They've prepaid it. They can do the lessons whenever they want. I think the advantage of it, with me anyway, if they booked a block of 10, then they can schedule 5 consecutive 2-hour lessons in 5 consecutive weeks. But they can't book the 6 week, and someone else can have that. And if they want that, they can book 12 instead of 10. But yeah, I don't really see that it's a problem if they do that. They can do it whenever they want. For me, you might think differently.
No, I agree, definitely, absolutely. Carmen, you've said change speed. It's very difficult to use of mirrors. I don't suppose you want to unmute and just give us a little bit more info on that comment. Can't see where you are.
Hiya. Yeah, no, I was just, hello. I was just thinking about what you were guys explain about the use of the mirrors, and yes, we, as you say, yes, it's like, oh, you can turn left, central mirror, left mirror, indicator, moving on. And I think if they get that and they start looking into the mirror, but as you say, they're looking into the glass, not into what is there. But at least they start to get it into, well, what I need to look in for, and then, okay, that's is there for you to see what is coming. Is the bike there? Or is the color of the car, somebody says there? But the problem is when they change the speed, so for 20 or 30, it's just so difficult to remind them they need to look into the mirror. You can talk, you can analyze, blah, 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 and they always give you the really good reason why they need to do it, but they don't do it. So it's just like, oh, you start to get desperate. So yes, I play games, but not all of them, they're competitive. And it's just like, oh, we're still playing the game? I go, yes, the whole point is for you to check in the mirrors. And I have all my students, I only have one, but enough for me. She failed because of changes the speed, didn't check the mirrors full time. So becoming serious. And that was really shocking because she was very good to use the mirror. Obviously, it wasn't that good because when the exam coming along, it was just the things they pointed out. So that's what I want to know. How can I help them with that? Because turning left and right, actually, they're just looking at change of speed. It's just a confounder.
Yeah. Are we talking about
an idea?
Are we talking about use of? Are we talking about using mirrors before we slow down, or using mirrors before we speed up to a faster speed?
Both.
I think quite often you need to make sure you're building you've got to build that habit, and learners are really good at building habits, and often it's the habit of not doing it, which shows that they're good at building habits, so that you can then build habits the other way. And I think something we do is we need to put a plan together to help them to do that. If we're just leaving them and they're missing it, then that's kind of on us, because we need to be doing something proactive to help them. So whether that's maybe a prompt, where you're saying sort of, what's behind you, or are you being overtaken, depending on whether you're speeding up or slowing down, and do that for a period of time, and then reflect on it, and then maybe try it when they try it on their own. So, you have to help them build the habit, is what I'm saying. The other thing as well would be, quite often when we let the learner try it on their own, it ends up being like dead silent. So it's like, right, you're going to try it on your own, so I'm just going to be quiet. But it's really good to see independent practice as the same as talk through, but the other person is doing it. So like a talk through would be you're saying what they need to do, saying it out loud, and they're doing it. Prompted version would be you asking questions to remind them what to do. But an independent shouldn't be two people sat in the car silent. It should be the learner telling you what they're going to do, which is sounds the same as talk through, but it's them talking themselves through it. And it's like when we do commentary driving, if you remember if you did commentary driving when you were doing your part 2, it gets you actively thinking about this thing, and that will help you build that habit. But if we're just doing an independent attempt for the next 10 minutes and you sat there in silence, they probably are going to forget to do it. But if they're charged with, you need to be looking down the road, and when you see something that's going to make you brake, I want you to tell me what you're going to do about that thing. Tell me the thing that's going to make you brake. Tell me what you're going to do about it. And let's run that exercise where they're speaking out loud. And that jogs their own memory.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought was doing it. And I'll be honest with you, I'm working really hard with them, but I know it's only one student, but when she's coming along with that serious fault because not checking your mirrors, it really threw me out. Because I thought it was the only one student, but for me, it's like I make some mistake in the way not to help the others. So yes, we try with all these things, but I thought it was something easy I can do just to remind them, or just,
Well, like I said, just get them talking out loud and get them telling you what they're going to do next. Because like I said, quite often when we're doing independent, it's just silence, and they're just going to forget what they're doing and then get distracted by other stuff. So have them involved.
Okay, thank you.
I think just to expand on that as well, you mentioned, Carmen, that they check their door mirrors at junctions really well. So potentially just transfer that skill that they already do. Ask them why they're checking their door mirrors for turning left and right. Ask them what they're looking for, what specifically could be there. What are they going to do if something is there? How are they going to judge if something is there? And then find out why they're doing those, and then say, well, why aren't you doing it behind you as well? And it could just simply be that they need a bit of a light bulb moment to go, well, there could be him over there, so he could be there as well. It just might be that they need to go, well, I already do it. I just need to look there instead of there. You're muted, but I saw you mouth thank you, so you are very welcome. We have, okay, Ian says, Carl, you had your hand up. Carl, I saw you had your hand up. Do you want to unmute? You muted, unmute. I've asked you to unmute. I've clicked the button.
Oh, there we go.
There you go. We've done it.
Right, nice
Hello.
one. Can I just add something what Lee mentioned before about, the robotic side of them looking in the mirrors and not really getting them to think about why they're doing it. I think something that helped me, that might help that lady that just spoke, was I quite often find that people that are not checking the mirrors are quite hunched and a bit nervous when they're driving. And I explained to them, it's a bit like, imagine a torch beam. You're in a dark room, and all you've got is your torch beam, which is your forward view and a bit of peripheral. And so you're going to be nervous until the lights come on. Yeah. And if you start looking in your mirrors, that's like putting the lights on. And it sort of opens it up. When they start looking, they become less nervous and stop gripping the wheel so hard and making better decisions. And I think that's a way of getting them to buy into it, by getting them to look at it from a different point of view, maybe something outside the car where they need to feel secure. And I think that when they start looking in the mirrors, that happens because they're looking at things and getting a good view of the surroundings rather than the torch beam light. You know what I mean? So that seemed to help.
I think that comes from lesson planning as well, doesn't it? That if the lesson is not right, then the last thing that the learner is thinking about is checking mirrors. So, and if they're grabbing the wheel, it's a clear indication that you've got the lesson wrong. And I think a good coach always points that finger of blame inwards. So is the practice area too hard? Is the thing we're working on too hard? Is the level of help not hard enough? And something isn't right in there if they're bricking it. It's what the DBSA call survival mode. And it's basically a negative. It's a show of a lack of competence on the side of the instructor. If the learner is spending all the time surviving, in other words, they're trying to just not die today, so they're not thinking about the mirrors.
Yeah, absolutely. We're just going to run through a few comments. We've had quite a lot, and I've just seen the time. So Ian says that he sometimes gets learners to name their centre mirror after their boss's name. Your centre mirror was called Mark yesterday. That's quite good. Lee, but not Spary, said after they've checked their mirror, ask them what colour the car is behind. That could potentially be a teaching and learning strategy that could help them to start looking. Absolutely. Still about Andy's beard, that chat's still going on. Let's have a look. Nikki, hello, I was a bit late joining, got the start time wrong. That's fine, Nikki. How would you interject when we need to increase the level of instruction when there isn't anywhere to pull over to discuss? Do you want to go first, or do you want me to?
Would you like me to help you more with this?
That's what you'd ask the learner, not me, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because that worked so well in that conversation then, didn't it?
It just needs to be quick. I'll give you an example. Like the learner's doing something independently, and then the ambulance comes behind. Or you turn onto a road, all of a sudden there's kids everywhere because the schools have just kicked out. The risk level has changed, so the roles and responsibilities might have to change with those roles, and it could be in that moment where you would quickly say, do you want me to help you with this? And then the roles have just changed for that temporary thing, so then you wouldn't need to park up and to increase the level. You've just done it in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, if things are going wrong, if you've clearly pitched your level of instruction wrong and there's so many things happening, it's really good for you to just recognize that in the moment, especially on your Part 3F standards check. There is nothing wrong with saying, look, this isn't working. We've got this coming up. I am going to help you with this. And let's work together. Let's get this right. As long as the learner has heard you communicate that that change is happening and the learner understands why you're putting that change in place, that's absolutely fine. It's necessary for risk. If loads of shitty things are happening, let's stop it all happening. Let's go, whoa, hang on. I'm going to help you with this. Let's get it right. And then we can pull up when we have an opportunity. Byron says, hi guys, thoughts on ADIs or PDIs working from a system? I'm assuming by system, Byron, you mean MSPSL, POM, LADA, all the other fantastic acronyms that we have in our industry.
Could you clarify that, please, Byron, before we talk about it? Just unmute yourself and let us know.
Hi guys, don't know if you can hear me.
Yep.
Yeah, it was less about the MSPSL routine and things like that and acronyms that we use. It was more about sort of teaching to a system, like from a breakdown, i.e. sort of starting at clutch control and then working your way through a system and not letting them sort of move on until you've sort of aced something and then obviously then let them move on. It was more about a system that way.
I mean, I've kind of written one, like a 41-page one. I don't know if anyone has, there might be people in the room that have got a copy of it already that has done the course that I do on it. But I think it's really important that you do that. It's really important that we build them up, you know, in that kind of building block way. And I think it's, you quite often end up with this kind of plate spinning scenario if you don't, where you might be doing, let's say, approaching a roundabout and your learner is dealing with roundabouts. And you're dealing with roundabouts, and also they're not very good at MSPSL. So now you've got another plate spinning, and now they're also stalling and braking badly, and gears are badly. It's like, oh, you got another one, and that isn't fun. That's not fun for you, and it's not fun for your learner. So if we've made sure that the control is right before we move on, if they can move off and park up correctly before we do, let's say, left turns and stuff, then we can bring those transferable skills there. Once they can do, you know, when they can approach like say a side road on the left, you know, independently, then they've already got the skills of using the mirrors, applying the signal, positioning, choosing a speed that fits that junction, picking a gear that fits that speed. And we can use all that at T-junctions. Yeah, because we've already got all that in the bag. So by the time you get to roundabouts, you're working on just the roundabout bit, and the learner should be already doing all that other stuff. So yeah, it's good to have a system.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. And I think Lee has written us a syllabus, a system that people can use that have been on his course. And I think it's really good for you as an instructor to know in your head where your learner should be at, what it is that you're doing. Like Lee said, you can't go up to a roundabout if you think, oh, they're going to stall here because they just stalled at the last one. They shouldn't be there then if that's an issue that's happening a lot. You need to have a rough guide in your head that can be adaptable and changeable depending on your location and your area. And, you know, if you get your learner gets in the car and you think, well, we did this last time, so this is probably the logical next step. But then your learner gets in and says, well, I've had a shit day at college and I don't want to do that. You do need to have that structure in play of knowing what the next step is, but obviously being client-centered and adaptable and changing it depending on lots of situations. But absolutely knowing that if you're coming up to a roundabout and they're still a bit iffy with car control or they have no awareness around them whatsoever, they shouldn't be on the roundabout. We need to take them, not even take them back a step, but just reconfirm those skills first before we put them in that sticky situation. I've lost where we are in the chat. Hang on, let me find it again. Yeah, LTD, that's a Chris Ben said thing as well. Instead of MSM, mirror signal maneuver, a learner hears maneuvers, parallel park, or signal, they think indicator. LTD is look, tell, do. It can be a little bit more simple for people.
I was going to say, thank God that you mentioned that was Chris Benstead, because he'd probably lose even more hair about it.
I know, don't worry.
You didn't credit him on it. So I'm glad that you dropped his name in there.
Yeah, like Ian says, a logical sequence of learning. You can't do a busy roundabout on lesson 2. Absolutely. And you are welcome, Byron. And it's just gone past 8 o'clock. So we've had an hour. We shall finish it there. Nick, I know you've raised your hand, but if you want to message me or Lee for anything after, feel free to. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I hope you've enjoyed this. Lee, have you enjoyed your first session of Ask Becky?
Yeah, I've been on much worse. So yeah, it was all right.
Phew, it went well. That's good, isn't it? Yeah, thank you everyone for joining. As I say, this is here every week. We'll see if we can get Lee on again at another time. And if you guys need anything at all, you know where I am, but you know where Lee is as well. He's always happy to help and chat to you all. Have a great evening, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Have a good night.